Hey everybody, Lee with LG Speed and Custom here, and welcome to part 3 of airbagging a 1959 Ford Galaxie. So in the first video, we covered putting airbags in the front, and we installed a 4-link rear suspension in the rear. In the second video, we raised the drive shaft tunnel 2 inches and built rear airbag brackets. In the third video, we're going to cover the rear shocks and then start on the air management system. This car, we are installing a AccuAir air management system with the E-level kit so that it automatically adjusts the ride heights to your settings. And we're gonna run 2 Viair 485 air compressors with a 5-gallon tank. So let's get to it. We're gonna start with the rear shocks. So for the rear shocks, we're using a Monroe 5752, which is the factory shock for like a 1949 Plymouth. I use these shocks a lot on hot rod applications, and I happen to have a set here, so I tried them on this, and they work perfect. These shocks compress to a really, really small height. So right now it's fully extended, and when it fully extends, it extends out at almost the same, like the airbag is just about fully extended as well. I think there's about a 1/2 inch more that the airbag could go, that the shock won't allow it to, but that is fine because this shock does compress all the way to when the airbag is fully compressed, the shock compresses too. So we can still get maximum drop on the air suspension. We just can't get maximum height, but it's like a 1/2 inch difference and it'll be fine. For the extra 1/2 inch, it's not worth going to the parts store and trying to find a completely different shock. So I apologize, I made these yesterday. So unfortunately, I forgot to film actually making them. But for the top, these are just the universal shock tabs that I sell on my website, lgspeedcustom.com. We just welded 2 of those to the top. And then on the underneath here, I just made a slightly different version that extends a little bit further back. So super straightforward. I have all this stuff available on, like if you need some, just get a hold of me and I can cut you out a set. One thing I'm going to add before we get on here is, and I'm sure in video 2, a lot of people already noticed that, this gusset I have on the side here goes to about this point here, but on the other side where our airbag plate welds onto, it ends here. So we've got from here to here that I think should probably have a gusset in it. So I think we'll start with that. We'll probably just cut something out on the plasma table that will support this to the end, because all the weight of the car is riding on there. And well, I'm sure it would probably be fine. At this point, I think it's easier to make a gusset on there and then know for sure that it's going to be fine, rather than, you know, take a gamble on it and see if it's fine and then in a couple years find out that it actually is starting to bend. So we'll do that first. I just cut out a little gusset template out of some 14 gauge, and I think we're probably going to put it right about there. So one thing to make a note of before we put this in is, see this bolt right here? If we weld this in, we'll never be able to get that bolt out. So before we weld this in, we got to switch that bolt so it comes through from the other side. And it does kind of bug me a little bit that I can't do a symmetrical one on this side because of the shock, but I think we can live with that. No one will ever see under here anyways, because it's going to be a 1/2 inch off the ground. All right, let's make a 1/4 inch version of that and weld it in. There we go. I feel a little more better about that. A little more better. Is that a word? Does that make sense? A little more better. I feel better about it. That'll be nice and strong. Okay, I'm gonna do that to the other side. All right, second side done. I think everything under here is all good to go now. With the underside all buttoned up, we can go back into the trunk here and finish that up. Remember, we had to cut this open because the back of the rear end housing was hitting the floor. So I just kind of made little extensions on there to slide this back a little bit. Oh, I can't reach in there. Let me get my stool here. So that sits like that. I'm just gonna have a couple tech screws to hold it in. That way you can still get it out if you wanna. It makes getting to the top of the forelink a little bit easier. So we'll spray some undercoating on there, just like we did on the transmission tunnel. Put this in for good and touch up our Dynamat. We've got that all finished up. So we're gonna move on to air management now. Air management is what makes all the airbags and everything work. So here's what we've got. We've got two Viair compressors. These are the biggest electric compressors you can buy. If you want to go any bigger than this, you got to go to an engine-driven compressor such as a York, which I really like because they make crazy fast CFM and they're super quiet. The downside to them is the engine needs to be running in order for it to compress air, whereas these you can just have, they just hook to the battery. So as long as you have a good strong battery, you can have your air compressors running without the car running. So if you're screwing around at a car show or something. The downside to these guys is they are noisy. They make this sound in your trunk every time they kick in. We've got I think this is a 5-gallon air tank with various ports in it. So we've got each compressor goes into a check valve and then goes into the tank. I'm gonna put water traps in here. I don't have any. I had to order them, but when they come, they'll just, basically unthread this, thread the water trap in, and thread this in. Down underneath, we have a drain right here, which will go to this little ball valve, and that is to drain our system, drain any water, drain any oil or anything out of that. These drains, I usually, instead of having a drain on the bottom of the tank, I'll usually plumb them in like somewhere down here so that you can drain all your water and stuff onto the ground rather than onto your trunk upholstery. From there we have, this is a pressure switch. This is what turns the compressor on and off. This one turns on at 165 PSI and turns off at 200 PSI. That means when the tank drops below 165, the compressors cut in, and then they cut out at 200 PSI. This is a pop-off valve. This should be rated for a little bit higher than 200. What is this one rated at? I can't read it on there. 225. So if our pressure switch malfunctions and at 200 PSI, this does not cut the compressors out and they keep pumping and pumping and pumping. When it hits 225 PSI, this blows open and lets the pressure off so that your tank doesn't explode. Next to that, we just have a little Schrader valve, and that is, say your tank's completely empty and you're in the shop, you can just fill your air tank up with your shop compressor rather than having to fill it from empty with these little guys. And then we have an air outlet here and an air outlet here. So these guys are going to run to this assembly. One will go in here and control the rear airbags, and one will go in here and control the front airbags. Air goes in there, that goes to front left bag, front right bag, rear left bag, rear right bag. We then have little spots in here. That is where you would hook your gauges up. However, AccuAir does not use gauges. So we're going to put these in instead. And these are kind of a safety device. If for whatever reason something malfunctions in here, you can fill this up with a regular air chuck, and it will override all of this so that you can put air in your airbags. This fancy looking flux capacitor doodad, this is the computer brain that makes all the magic happen. So AccuAir we're going to be installing ride height sensors on the wheels, and they will tell this what height the car is at, and then this will tell this how much air to put in or let out of the airbags. Magic. And then we will also have, I don't have it out yet, it's in that box over there, but we will have like a little touchpad that goes in the car that you can set you've got 3 preset ride heights that you can choose from, or you can still individually choose like front, back, left, right, and then each wheel individually. This here is a 80 amp relay that will power up our compressors. And I think that is everything. These are bulkheads that are going to go where the airlines are going to come out of here to go to the airbag. But rather than drilling a hole and running the airline through the car body, it will just go into here, and then on the underside of the floor, we will have this, which will go to the airbag. That just makes it a little bit cleaner install. These are our fittings for our rear bags. Here is one water trap that I had, but it's not going to work for this application, so it's in the discard pile. I would like to put all this stuff up there. So what I'm going to do is cut a sheet of 3/4 inch MDF that is the same width as that, but this shape, and we're going to build all this on the bench and then take that MDF piece of wood with all this and put it in the trunk. The reason I want to use MDF is just for like sound, the vibrations and sound deadening for these compressors. If you mount these direct right to the metal, you're gonna hear them throughout the entire car. The car, every time they kick in, your rear view mirror is gonna be vibrating. And so if we put all this on MDF, then it kind of absorbs all that sound. So I've got our basic concept layout mocked up on the bench here. I'm gonna cut this out on a piece of MDF, and then we'll start securing this stuff down. Just working on the board layout here. So we've got our tank bolted down and our compressors on each side, and now I'm figuring out where I'm going to put the computer, the manifold, and you got to put that as well. I was scrolling online looking at pictures of like boomerang style coffee tables, because I thought that would be kind of cool to cut this out in like a boomerang shape. And then Jim suggested, there's that V on the trunk lid here. This guy right here, and I was like, hey, that's a pretty cool idea, especially when you open the trunk, you got a V and then a V. So I've drawn that on here. So once I've got my kind of layout figured out, ignore there's 2 lines, one's got a squiggle through it because I drew on the wrong side of the line. So once I've got this layout all kind of figured out, then we'll shape it to look like that. started getting a little ridiculous with this boomerang coffee table idea. Huh? I think that'll be cool. Okay, I've got everything mocked up on here. So we've got our post coming up. I'm gonna paint this post Wimbledon white. All this blue is gonna be polished aluminum. We're gonna have our V. This is gonna be pleated in the same kind of fabric that the interior is done in. And I think that's it. What do you think, Jim?
I think it's great.
I just took this little computer brain box and sanded all the powder coating off this edge and then polished it to try and make it look, I don't know, a little more vintage or correct for, like, not look out of place in a 1950s car. I don't know if it'll work or not, but we'll have a look at it and see. It kind of reminds me of like an old TV. Where'd my rag go? There it is. Yeah, that's kind of cool. What do you think, Jim? He likes it. I think that looks pretty cool. I think we're at the point now where, oh, no, we're not. We still got to screw this relay down. This is for the compressors. Once we get that screwed down, I think we can blow all this apart and cut our V shape out and then start upholsterinating. Jim's over here cleaning up all the 4-link bars. He's gonna give them a little coat of paint and then that can all go together. A couple years ago, my friend Rick Montgomery gave me a box of these really long drill bits, and they are the best. Oh, come on. Well, there's your problem. That's not going to work. Welcome to the upholstery loft. You guys have been here before. This is where we did the tuck and roll seat on Shane's Model A. We are going to upholster this. Here's some fabric that I got. This is almost a 110% perfect match to what the door panels in the car are already made of. They don't match the seats. The seats are pearl, but the door panels are not, and I cannot get pearl salmon, macho salmon. But this will be fine because, like I said, it matches the door panels completely, and this is going to be in the trunk, so you will never see it beside the seat anyway, so
nobody will ever notice that it's not quite right. We are going to do a pleated layout on here, sort of. Gonna do a line right across here, and from this line forward is going to be probably like 2-inch pleats. Then we're gonna break it up with this cool tinsel piping, which is the same piping that the car interior is done with. And then from there back is just going to be solid, no pleats or anything. So I think that'll give it kind of a nice custom look that will tie in with the interior, tie in with the aesthetic of the entire car, that like super cool late 50s atomic jet age styling. And yeah, it's gonna roll. So we're gonna do that first. I think we'll draw our design out quickly on here and then do our pleated section.
So I went off our center line here and measured every 2 inches, and that will give us 19 pleats in total. So we're gonna lay 19 pleats out on our material and sew them up. When I always do these pleats, it's very rare that you actually get a total perfectly even spacing all the way out to the end. For example, this one here, 20 inches should be where we're at, but we're actually at like 20 and a half. So rather than put a pleat at our 2-inch mark at 20 and have a funny little end, we're just gonna do our last pleat at the 18-inch mark, because when it's all upholstered and put in there, you're never gonna notice that the last pleat is actually like 2 3/8. But if you put a mark or a pleat at the 20-inch and then have like a little 3/8 extra, you're definitely gonna notice that. Make sense? Makes sense. Now that we've got our layout drawn out on here, we're going to cut this piece out, lightly glue it to some scrim, which is a foam that's got like a mesh on the back so that you can sew to it, and the mesh stops the thread from pulling through, and that's what gives your pleats and your tuck and roll and stuff the shape to them. I've drawn everything on here using a white grease pencil. I use grease pencils for everything upholstery related. Never, ever, 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 ever use Sharpie, ever. Because Sharpie doesn't come off and it will bleed through. If you draw on the backside of this with Sharpie, come back like 6 months later and those lines will have bled through. Even on foam, I see people lots of times, they'll trace their shape out on the seat with a Sharpie or something. I'm just like, because eventually over time, it might take 6 months, it might take a year, it might take 2 years, but eventually that Sharpie bleeds through. Obviously, if you have like a black interior, it's gonna be fine, but if you're doing anything that's color, just use a grease pencil. All right, where is our foam? Here it is here. So here's the scrim. Some people also call it sew foam. Whatever way you want to call it, doesn't really matter. So what? But yeah, there's the little mesh on the back. So we're gonna lightly glue this onto there. The only reason we're gluing it down is just to simply hold it until we can sew our pleats in, and then obviously the sewing the threads in are going to hold it on there. But for now, we need something to hold it. Probably something like that. Or can we get it across there? Try to use this stuff as kind of sparingly as possible to have minimal waste. That looks good there.
So we'll fold that up. This is just some spray adhesive. Perfect. Like so. Huh? Get it? So. Now we can cut this out. And we'll move over to the sewing machine. I'm thinking probably white stitching to kind of match. The whole inside of the car is this color, salmon, coral, pink, rose, followed with white and black accent colors. So I figured our tank is black, our little post that holds our computer and stuff is white, the air manifold is black, the computer is black. So let's put white stitching in there to kind of keep a nice even mix of white and black. I guess I didn't have to cut this part off, but because it'll get trimmed once we cut our final shape off. Oh well. Oh yeah, there's even white thread in the machine already. Perfect. Jim made this snap-on tuck and roll tonneau cover and tuck and roll firewall the other day for Joe Ball's Model A Roadster pickup, so that's why we got white thread in the machine still. Let's get sewing. Fire this thing up. This is a 1956 Singer that I got from the son of the original owner, who's a good friend of mine. And when his dad passed away, the family sold me the sewing machine. So it's super cool because these old machines, you can still get parts for them. And they, like anything old, they were built to last. They work so good. So this machine, this table, and this chair have been together the whole time. Hey, here's our first pleat going down. Beautiful. Just got to do that 18 more times. As much as I really like upholstery work because it's so satisfying, but at the same time, it's very monotonous. All right, here's our pleated piece. So it's gonna go there. But now we still need to do this piece. And we have to put this piece on some scrim as well, just to bring it up to the same plane, the same level area. If we don't do that, obviously when you sew this together and go to put it on, it's gonna drop down a 1/4 inch. This is 1/4 inch scrim. You can get scrim in different thicknesses. The most common are 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch. If you use 1/2 inch scrim, you're just gonna get deeper, more plush pleats. So for this piece, it just needs to be the same width as that, which is 46. And we're gonna wrap around, I don't know, we'll go 2.5 inches. Brings us to 13. Plus we gotta add 3/8 of an inch for our seam allowance, which is the area behind the seam where you sew together. So we need 13 and 3/8. Yeah, 13 and 3/8 by 46. So we'll lay that out. The 46 part should be easy, because it's just the same width as what we already got.
Pretty sure that was 46. Yeah. So we just got to go 13 inches up from there. 13 and 13. Grab our grease pencil again. Where is our other straight edge here? Double check that. That's 13. Actually, we'll just make a mark at 13. Wait, we need 13 and 3/8. Ah, it'll stretch enough. I went pretty big. It'll be fine. If this wasn't just a simple wrap and it was an actual proper like panel that we were making, then we would definitely need that 3/8. The other thing we can do is cut on the other side of our line. That'll give us a little bit more too. Where's my scissors? Well, I don't know where my scissors are, so I guess that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Just kidding, I found them. They were the last place I looked, right where I left them. Okay, this piece we're done with for now. We've got that much left over for future projects. All right, we've got our pleated piece, we've got our solid piece, we've got our piping. Now we just need to sew those three together and we can wrap our panel. I just want to mention that aside from this being our upholstery room with all the upholsteration supplies, this is also our merch room. This is where we've got all our LG Speed and Custom shirts. We've got, those are women's shirts there. We've got Brown Sugar and 47 Ford shirts there. T-Bird shirts, Roadster shirts, and then of course the LG logo. So whenever you buy a shirt from lgspeedcustom.com, every single shirt is packaged by Shannon and myself. That little extra bit, that extra bit of care. Okay, enough about that. Let's sew these together. I'm going to start by sewing the piping to the pleated section. I made the piping a little bit big so that we've got a bit of excess hanging off. Piping is really easy to sew when you have a piping foot, which is a foot that basically holds the piping in place for you. Some people that are really good at upholstering can do the piping and both panels all at the same time. I am not at that level yet. I don't know if I'll ever be at that level. I don't mind doing them one at a time. That's more like production, when you gotta sew 20 seat covers a day kind of work. All right, that's step one. Now we just gotta do that again with our other panel. I always cut the strings off because sometimes you really don't have to, but I've had a couple times where the string has got tangled in there and it just makes a big mess. Put those face to face. So this little part right here, this is the seam allowance I was talking about. This is the 3/8 that I accidentally cut off of here, but it'll be fine because, I mean, that was accommodating for 2.5 inches of wrap, and now we'll just have, 3/8 less. Make sure we got bobbin, Give it a little reverse lock stitch. Okay, here we go. Done. Let's open it up, see what it looks like. Whoa! Perfect. It's lunchtime. We're gonna stop, have some lunch, and then after lunch we'll wrap our board and wrap it up. Oh man, lunch was so good. Went over to BMO Burger, got a cheese and mushroom. So I've drawn a center line on here, and we still have our line that we drew on here. Now when we go to wrap this, we want this line to stay straight. We don't want it to get all wonky. So we're gonna take our staple gun here, and we're gonna staple our piping down along our seam allowance on this edge. We don't need a lot, just enough to kind of hold it from sliding around. So we'll get our center line where it's got to go. Kerblamo. Come over here. Split the difference. And do the same on this side. All right, now when we fold this open, it should, oh, that might not have worked actually. Might have to change that plan because you can see where every staple is, and I don't like that. Okay, scratch that. We're gonna pull the staples out. Maybe we'll just leave one in the middle and just kind of be careful when we're, all right, I pulled them all out except for the ends, and we'll just kind of pay attention as we're doing this to make sure that it doesn't get, I think it'll be okay. It's a small enough piece that it'll be fine. Okay, let's flip this around. All right, start with our center and our center. And our center. And our center. So from here, we're just going to do our ends and then kind of split the difference all the way through. Let's make sure we're still going straight. Yep. Well, I think that looks amazing. I'm stoked on it. So our next step before we go and put everything on here is we're just going to take some scissors and trim all this excess off that we don't need. All right, we can go put this together now. So I don't know if you guys paid attention when I was putting this together, but I drilled all my holes all the way through. And now I know where they are when I go to put everything back together, because obviously we can't see them anymore. That looks so cool. Ugh. You know, one thing I really like about building hot rods and race cars is you get to do all the the engineering part of design. But one thing I really like about customs is you get to do the artistic side of design. And I love both parts equally as much. I always wanted to be an automotive designer, but I knew that the stuff that I like would never ever fly in today's world. So That's kind of why I went towards custom cars. All right, let's put this together. I want to see what it looks like. All right, so we're gonna mount our relay here, but we need to find our holes. We're gonna take this long drill bit that I like so much, go underneath, feed this up through the hole, and then once we know where it is, draw on it with the grease pencil, then take this pointy screwdriver. Look at that. Bam, there's your hole. Bam. I gotta go to the nut and bolt store. I went and got 8 of these the other day for the compressors, but I forgot to compensate for the thickness of the upholstery, and now they're just like that much too short. What a bummer. You got longer bolts. The compressors are done. Air tank time. Last piece. Yeah. Now we just gotta plug everything in and wire it up.
I'm so stoked on how this turned out. We're gonna hook our air lines up now. So when you put all these fittings in, Jim, that's loud. Use Loctite 545 as your thread sealant, and that way you're guaranteed not to have a leak. You have my personal guarantee. That means nothing, but you know, you can have it. So these guys, you just push them in, and that's it. Super straightforward. So we want to go into the middle here, the one that says in, air goes in, and then it comes out these 2 side ones to go to each bag. We're gonna use the Mighty Snips. Thanks to Marty, who sent us those. Marty from Virginia. Is it Virginia or West Virginia? Is there a difference? I don't know. I'm not American, I don't know. Let's guess about where my thumb is. Oh yeah, that'll work. Okay, we're gonna cut this guy the same length. Look at how good these things work. Watch your fingers. Look at that end. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, let's push that guy in there. Is that enough? Maybe we could shorten it a little bit more. Nah, that'll be fine. Cool. There we go. All right, what do we got left? These 4 will go to the bags. So that's it for plumbing. These guys are just loose because we're still waiting on those water traps. We can wire up our relay back here to wire up our air compressors. And I think that's it. Wire a pressure switch up to the relay. Easy peasy. We've got this relay all wired up here. It was really straightforward to do with this relay wiring schematic piece of paper that came in the box. The only wires we still have to run is we need to run a ground cable. So we'll do that once it's in the car, and it's just gonna go to this stud here. Next here we've got, this is the ground for this compressor here.
Then we have on the opposite side here a ground for that compressor. On our relay here, we've got this post back here is our power going to the compressor. That is these red wires right here, one for each side. They're just teed together on that little post right there. This wire right here, we need to run, we're gonna run a big, heavy cable direct from the battery through a fuse, obviously, that goes to there. So we're gonna have power going into there, and then when the relay is activated, it puts the power through to there. To activate this relay, we have this wire coming off our pressure switch. We're gonna have another wire coming from the car that goes to the pressure switch, and that's gonna be hooked up to the key. And that way, none of this system will work unless the key is turned on. So the key's gonna put power to there. Then when this pressure switch gets below 165 PSI, it will connect our circuit. This purple wire runs down here, and that will activate the relay. And then the relay has a ground wire that is just piggybacked over to here. So we'll put that when we put this whole system in the trunk, then we'll hook up those last couple wires.
So I think we're gonna call this video right here because we're getting at like 45 minutes and there's probably only like 3 of you guys still watching because nobody watches 45-minute long videos. So in the next video, we're gonna put this in the car, wire it up, and plumb it to our bags. Jim is underneath the car right now, and he is hooking up the E-level sensors. These are the little ride height sensors. So we'll cover that in the next video as well. Hi, Jim. Hi. We'll cover that in the next video as well. And hopefully that should be everything to finish the air ride system off in this car. So make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications button so that when that video goes up, you know all about it. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the next video. Oh, thanks to the Cavalieros for the music on this. Go check out the Cavalieros on Bandcamp. Download their album, it costs like $5. And they'll really appreciate the support. So we'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching.